Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm with you
Moving
on that pick.
on up the card, the co-main event. This is where it really gets good, folks. Gilbert Burns, Dorino Burns, take it on Jorge, George, Gamebred, Masvidal, as John Anik likes to say. What are your thoughts on this one, Keith?
Believe it or not, I'm actually conflicted. My brain is telling me that Gilbert Burns goes out there and just out wrestles Masvidal for however long he needs to, and then uses that great jujitsu and locks something up. Makes Masvidal tap, but there also is a part of me that thinks that maybe since the Colby fight, Jorge's been training, takedown defense, wrestling a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, it's that's like the hardest thing to learn at his age, right? He's getting close to 40. It's almost impossible to learn wrestling at 40. Um, but I do think that there's a chance that if these two guys do stand and bang a little bit, that that Jorge has like the upper hand in that department. But I am going to go with Gil. I think Gil's going to submit him. He's just got the advantage on the ground, a very clear advantage. In his last fight, who did he fight? Neil Magny. Neil Magny, very long guy, took him down and locked him up with like an arm triangle in, zero point 0.0 seconds, basically. So I think it's going to be a very similar outcome with Jorge this weekend. What do you think, Tom?
I didn't really have a pick for this. I was really conflicted. I don't even know if I'm going to put my money. I'm going to put my money on it. And you know what? Because I'm going to put my money on it, I just can't justify Dorino Burns as a 500 favorite. Plus minus 250, probably. 300, yeah. That's getting a little crazy. 500, you're out there. I'm going to go with George Masvidal to win, and here's why. I think George Masvidal, listening to him on Rogan, he's been talking about the fact that he's known grappling was his weakness for a long time, and he's been working on it. And, going out there, Colby tried to wrestle him. Kamaru tried to wrestle him. They didn't have a ton of success. And even if they were able to get him down, it wasn't like they held him down for extended periods of time. A lot of that fight, Colby had, George up against the cage, So I think it's a very different style. That's a pure grappling wrestling style, whereas Dorino Burns is more of a Brazilian jiu-jitsu style. He's got a little bit of of wrestling that he mixes in, but it's more of a pure jiu-jitsu style, and that's where he's good at. And honestly, he hasn't really used that a lot at 170. He didn't use that a ton at 155 either. He was one of those guys that fell in love with the hands and really never turned back. And we always would talk about him having the jiu-jitsu style, and we want to, Gilbert Burns is so dangerous in jiu-jitsu, but he doesn't use it. I also think George Masvidal is training specifically not just his grappling, but his ability to stand up, similar to or stay standing, similar to Kevin Holland. And I just think that if Gilbert Burns has an issue with taking George Masvidal down, and this turns into a standing matchup, Gilbert Burns leaves his head open a lot, and he got hit hard by Khamzat Chimaev a lot. He's a guy who absolutely can, be finished. He got finished by the power jab to the ground and pound by Kamaru Usman. To think that George Masvidal doesn't still have the ability to find, Gilbert Burns, find him in the chin, and those, exchanges where George or Masvidal find those exchanges where Gilbert Burns is going to leave himself open because striking really isn't his forte. And when he does, it's very wild. To think that George can't find him there is absolutely ludicrous. So, plus 360 on that opportunity for something we know is going to start on the feet. We know there's probably going to be at least a couple exchanges because at least for the first part, George Masvidal is going to be able to defend those takedowns unless he comes in at 38 years old and, he can't defend shit anymore and Gil is on this new level. Then, hey, then that 500 was justified. And we read it wrong. Sorry. But I haven't seen enough evidence to make me believe that Gil Burns, after one fight with Neil Magny, is going to come in and be able to take everyone in the entire division down and submit them inside of a round or two. That's happened once and great. And that's great for the future, but I can't rely on that as the norm until I see it more. So I'm not going to bet on that, and especially not for minus 500. And then when George Masvidal, who is a guy I've listened to for 3 hours, talk about his takedown defense and really hasn't had too many examples of him being inexperienced on the ground. He's usually able to stand and bang and keep it standing. So, just because Colby gets him down a couple of times and now you're against a different type of grappler, I expect that, Gil's going to just run right through him. I haven't seen that either. So I'm going to bet that this probably spends at least half the time standing. And in half the time standing, I'm thinking George is going to be able to find Gil, and that's what I'm going to bet on. So I'm going to go George Masvidal is going to get this one done. I think he's going to land the more powerful shots on the feet. I think he's going to keep it standing for at least 2 full rounds, maybe a little bit less than that, but at least a round and a half. And I think when it gets down, and I don't think Gil is going to be able to rush and find a submission or have too much success on the ground in the short amount of time that he finds it there. I'm going Gamebred Masvidal plus 360.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen Gilbert take guys down and at least control them before, though. Like Wonder Boy, he did that to him. I mean, I definitely think that Masvidal could find Gilbert's chin, but I really don't think that George is a great wrestler, and I think that Gil has a very clear. I mean, even if he does the same thing, hangs onto his seatbelt and takes him up against the cage, maybe makes him drop to his knees and then just starts landing those short punches. I still see Gilbert being able to do that, and maybe not finish the fight, but the grappling advantage is massive. The best thing I think George has going for him is he's been training with Bo Nickel. He spoke about that on Joe Rogan a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be huge for him. Bo Nickel, obviously lighting the world on fire right now.
Right.
But, he's almost 40. It's like super hard to learn a new physical skill at 40 years old. No less a skill that, guys that are really proficient at it start training at like 6 years old. So, I'm still rolling with Gil, but I definitely support your logic.
And minus 500 is, I mean, listen, I would probably be betting. I mean, I think I see that future where Gilbert Burns takes Masvidal down at least to the side of the cage, holds him there, lands some punches. There's a big volume disparity because of that. There's a control time disparity because of that. He does that, for the majority of the fight, and he wins the fight. Yeah, I see that possible future. I know that can happen, but I'm just saying, if I have to bet on this, I feel more confident putting $10 to win 36 on George Masvidal than I do $10 to win $2.50 on Gilbert Burns. It's more return on that investment in terms of the probabilities of what I think is going to happen. Because I think there's probably a 50, 55, 60% chance that Gilbert Burns holds down Masvidal. But I think it's probably a 20, 25, 30% chance, 40, maybe 30% chance that it doesn't. And this spends the majority of the time on its feet. And in that situation, I think Jared Masvidal lands the better shots or potentially put him out. So I'm betting on that because I get the return on investment. So
yeah, I look forward to seeing what Fight to Go the Distance is going to look like.
For sure.